We've all had that moment. A stranger approaches you at a parking lot asking for money to fill up his car. He's stuck there unless you help him. Trust and compassion immediately kick in, followed by doubt and cynicism. This man truly seems to be in need, but he could turn away from you without so much as a thank you. So what do? Do you give him the money, or do you heartlessly refuse him? In today's society, it's tough to know exactly how trusting to be towards others. While being extremely susceptible to the most obvious of scams is clearly not ideal, neither is being so cynical that it's impossible to accept anything new. Is there a healthy balance between trust and cynicism? And might these two extremes be fundamentally connected to false presuppositions? Every so often in the news we hear about people who fall for the most outrageous of scams. Then again, there are the stubborn proponents of overturned theories such as the Flat Earth Society or the 9/11 conspiracy theories. Perhaps both camps are linked by the fact that both refuse to look at the evidence correctly to perceive what is in front of them. Is there a way to judge fairly and rationally? Gullibility often stems from a lack of understanding based on a shallow education. The idea that vaccinations are dangerous has been widely debunked, but the conflict still persists. Many people refuse to look at the empirical tests that have shown that vaccinations are perfectly safe. However, we need to get a good grasp of the subject matter before we can evaluate something. Often people just want to believe what they see and hear. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the famed author of the Sherlock Holmes novels and short stories, was a leading spiritualist who was deeply convinced of the presence of spirits. Meanwhile, Elsie Wright and Frances Griffiths, two British schoolgirls, had been playing in the woods near their homes and taken pictures with fairies. Now, Doyle was so encouraged by the fact that proof of spirits had finally surfaced that he published an article in the magazine The Strand. Many years later, the girls admitted that they had faked the entire incident. Doyle, though an extremely intelligent man, had allowed his beliefs to bias him, and he saw what he wanted to see, supernatural occurrences. Doyle made the critical error of not looking at the details objectively, but rather using the details to fit his own version of the truth. Everyone has a conditioned sense of skepticism, but there are the hardcore, stubborn proponents of overturned theories. My former teacher liked to debate 9/11 conspiracy theories. Some people believe that thousands and thousands of tons of dynamite had been moved into the Twin Towers to allow the buildings to collapse. My teacher would bring up surefire evidence. Why did the people inside the building smell jet fuel? And what about the people who were outside the buildings and saw the plane slam into the Twin Towers? However, these theorists brushed aside any contradicting evidence, maintaining their hardline, no compromise mindset. Gullibility and cynicism seem like extremes that cannot be reconciled. But can they? See, both actually stem from the same place, misplaced beliefs. Stereotypes and prejudice easily blind us to the truth, even if it is presented to us on a silver platter. We turn up our noses to what is right, seeing what we want to see and hearing what we want to hear. When you think back to every example, people held on to previous erroneous beliefs rather than begin afresh with the information they received. Misplaced beliefs can have serious consequences. When a British band called the Beatles tried to sign with the record company struck down their attempt, saying that groups with guitars are on the way out. Meanwhile, 19th century scientist Ignaz Semmelweis proposed that doctors wash their hands before dealing with patients. Semmelweis was ridiculed for his theory and was forced to relocate and eventually abandon his practice. Imagine how many thousands of lives could have been saved had doctors only washed their hands. And how many mothers and babies could have been saved had doctors only performed on them with clean hands. Now I know what you're thinking. I'm too discerning to commit such an egregious error. but that's the very kind of prideful thinking that comes before a terrible fall. I want to tell you about a time that cynicism struck so close to home that I was shocked. One night at the dinner table, my mother and grandmother announced that that the United States was accepting thousands and thousands of Syrian refugees. I was overjoyed at the news, but utterly distraught at what happened next. My mother and grandmother went on to denounce the news, saying that these Syrian refugees might be haters of Western culture and wish for its downfall for all we knew. I was appalled. How could my own family be so cynically racist? I found out later that these views originated from the racist ramblings of presidential candidate Donald Trump. Trump implied that these Syrian refugees might be part of the Islamic State of Iran and Syria, and Trump, like the rest of us, needs to remove the veil that disables us from objectively seeing the world. There is, in fact, a solution to not being too gullible or cynical. Let's have wide open eyes. Let's be initially accepting to everything we hear. However, the next step is most important. We need to have a critical eye. It is imperative that we look at everything in detail, examining for ourselves whether something is true. We need to plumb the depths of truth and veracity. Only then can we accept something as truly tenfold. It's clear that not being open to anything and everything leads to cynicism, and not having the discernment to see the false in claims leads to gullibility. When you think it is necessary to have these two elements to be thoughtful, perceptive individuals. So how often do you blindly accept something in the news as true? And how often do you quickly dismiss an incredulous event as false? While it may be so easy to fall into the traps of cynicism and gullibility, we need to be open and critical of everything we see. The next time you face a man in the parking lot, make him explain the situation. If he sounds suspicious, leave the scene. But if he is producing details that sound impossible to fabricate, be conscious of his needs and make the sound decision. Let's pause, take in everything we hear, and make an unbiased judgment from what is presented to us. So I urge you, use your ears and then use your noggin.